Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. You know, it's been just about 10 years since I started this channel, and so I thought this might be a good time to sort of reflect on the first decade of the Idahoan Show. And so this will just be a video pretty much of me rambling, but to keep the conversation somewhat focused, I did come up with a set of 4 questions that we can talk about here today. Question number 1, how did I get started? Well, truth is, back in 2011, I was done with college. I had a job lined up, but it was a few months yet before the job actually started. And so I was temporarily living in my parents' basement. And being as it was winter in Idaho, there wasn't a whole lot to do outside. Being as I didn't have a workshop yet or anything like that, there wasn't a whole lot to do inside. And so among other things, to kill time, I was watching YouTube videos. And if you think back to the YouTube stars of that time, you know, there was Hickok45 who, at that time at least, absolutely refused to edit any of his videos. And so he'd post these really long, dull, unedited videos of him going to the shooting range. And then there was FPS Russia, who was much more engaging, much more entertaining, but he could get kind of crude at times, especially with his humor. And I'm watching these videos and thinking, wow, I mean, these guys must be making a lot of money on their videos because, you know, FPS Russia, for one, would burn $1,000 worth of ammo in one video. Now, in hindsight, I think he was independently wealthy, and I don't know if he ever actually broke even on his channel, but that's beside the point. You know, I'm seeing these early YouTube stars and thinking, wow, you know, I could make videos about going to the shooting range that would be, you know, better edited and more engaging than Hickok45 and, you know, cleaner, more family friendly than FPS Russia. And then maybe I'll be able to make so much money on this that I won't even need a regular job. So I started a YouTube channel, and, you know, kind of with that general idea in mind, and it pretty quickly became apparent that it wasn't going to be a big money maker, at least not for a long time. But it was also kind of a fun hobby in itself, and it was an easy way to document some of my other hobbies, be able to share them with, you know, friends and family that I might not be able to get together with in person very often. And so it ended up being something that I continued to pursue just as a hobby for going on 10 years and counting now. Question number 2, how has YouTube changed over the years? Well, I'd say it's changed a lot, especially in terms of sort of the general atmosphere as reflected in video quality. I remember, you know, back in 2011, 2012, the atmosphere on YouTube was very casual. It was mostly home videos, and it was mostly videos that were pretty low quality. In fact, it was mostly videos that were recorded with phones, and you know, there were some phones at that time that had decent cameras, you know, like the iPhones of the day, but there were still a lot of flip phones with cameras that had like a 200 pixel by 200 pixel resolution and just egregious compression. And, you know, to the point where in that day and age, I feel like if you uploaded a video to YouTube that had sufficiently good video quality to where you could see the subject, you know, it wasn't so washed out or so dark that you just couldn't see anything, and the camera was actually pointed at the subject so you could see what was going on, and if the sound quality was good enough to where you could actually make out intelligible words and understand what was being said, you know, just that basic intelligibility of the video puts you solidly in the top 10% of YouTube videos for quality. Just because there were so many where, you know, you'd have a video that really all you had to go on for what the video was about was what was in the title and the description, because you couldn't make out what was actually happening in the video. And whereas today, it amazes me how many even relatively small startup channels are clearly running professional grade camera equipment and have a dedicated editing team and are really making a professional video production, and just how competitive the playing field has become for YouTube videos. So it used to be very casual, now it's extremely competitive, at least if you want to be kind of in that top tier of channels that are viewed as successful or that have any potential of being commercially viable, of actually making money. I mean, when I first started, I feel like my video quality was basically right up there with the top few percent of YouTube stars, whereas now I'm nowhere close to that. I'm kind of in the middle of a collection of hobbyists who have continued running consumer-grade camcorders and doing a one-man show, while all of the competitive or commercially viable channels have gone to professional video equipment, professional video editing teams. So that's the biggest change that I've seen over the years. Question number 3. Have you experienced any censorship over the years? This is a question that I get asked periodically by people, and so I thought this might be a good time to address it. And I think the short answer is yes. I've had my share of dealings with censorship, or at least the threat of censorship, but I feel like I need to qualify that because I think there's some misunderstandings about what the situation really is. For starters, I'd like to clarify that censorship on YouTube, or at least the threat thereof, is not a new thing. It's a concept that's buried deep in their roots. In fact, I remember probably circa 2008, when I first heard about YouTube and was kind of checking out the platform, I tried to create an account, and I got to their terms and conditions page where they had what's the equivalent of their community guidelines. I think it was called something else back then, but basically it said, among other things, that any video that so much as alluded to the possibility of objective truth was prohibited from being posted on their platform. I'm sure that's not the exact wording, but it was worded about that strongly. It sent a very clear message that if you believe in, objective morality, objective truth, anything like that, then you're not welcome on this platform. And well, of course, at that time, I'm like, well, I believe in objective morality. I believe in absolute truth, and I'm not going to hide that in my videos. And so at that time, I couldn't agree to that, and so I didn't create the account. Now, something changed either in their policy, or I don't think they ever really enforced that original policy on prohibiting or censoring any content that alluded to the existence of objective truth. And eventually they did rewrite their community guidelines and so forth. In fact, interestingly enough, when I did create this channel I guess it was like the very end of 2011, basically 2012 is when I got started. When I created the channel, I was specifically watching for their terms and conditions page because I wanted to make sure that it had been updated and that it was something I could agree to. And interestingly enough, when I created the channel, it never presented me with any terms and conditions to agree to, which is unusual. I don't know if it was a glitch in the program or if there was some window of time there where they just didn't have a terms and conditions page, or maybe in between versions of it or something. I don't know. And I don't think that that really grants me any meaningful immunity. But the fact is, I created a YouTube channel without ever agreeing to any terms and conditions. But all that to say that the threat of censorship on YouTube is nothing new. And really the only thing that's consistent about censorship on YouTube is that it's inconsistent. Over the years I've had a lot of videos that were demonetized and then remonetized, and then demonetized and then remonetized. And here and there they'll delete one or enable age restrictions, or I don't think I've had this happen myself, but I've heard from other YouTubers that they've even had videos that YouTube deleted and then undeleted. So they've actually had deleted videos come back and then maybe get deleted again later. I mean, I think to explain it, I would fall back on my experience working as an engineer for big corporations. I've never worked for Google or YouTube per se, but I've worked for a few big corporations, and there's this concept that we would refer to as flavor of the month, where once a month, or realistically it was more like a couple times a year, all the big wigs, the corporate executives would get together and they'd have their strategy meeting where they'd come up with the latest new strategy for how we're going to succeed in the coming year, the coming quarter. And they'd come out with some new buzzwords and some new ideas or new ideals that sound good, and it's hard to tell if they really mean anything. And they pass these down through the chain of management, and over the next few months, the managers and ultimately the engineers would sort of chew on these and figure out how to implement the new directives. And by the time that you actually had some actionable directives that you were working on and maybe starting to make a little bit of progress on, the calendar would have rolled around to the next big corporate strategy meeting, and there'd be a whole new set of ideals being pushed down that are now pushing you in a completely different direction. And so, I guess it's kind of a matter of corporate momentum, where, if we think of this graphically, you have the corporate executives that are jumping around from, one idea to the next, and so their trajectory might look something like this, where they're just kind of all over the place with their ideas. And then because of the corporate inertia and the time and the energy it takes to actually get things done, to take these ideas and distill them down to something actionable and start working on it, the actual trajectory of the company just kind of orbited in a little, area down here where, we went back and forth on things, but didn't change anything all that much. And I have to wonder if the same thing is happening at YouTube and at Google, where one day the CEO is panicking because ad revenues are down, and companies are threatening to boycott them because they had some video offended someone important or something. And so they enact a bunch of policies that are designed to make people feel safe about advertising with them, and sort of clamp down on the videos that they are worried about being offensive, and try to make themselves more advertiser friendly. Well, then the ad revenue starts to trickle back in, but you have a lot of content creators that are leaving because their channels are getting destroyed by the new policies, and so then they back off on the policy to try and bring some of these people back, or at least keep the channels that they want, the channels that are going to bring in views. And so they kind of bounce around, and as these different directives trickle down to the engineers and to the copywriters and whoever all else, you got one person who's trying to keep their community guidelines updated. You've got somebody else who's working on their algorithms that pick out which videos are monetizable or which videos get flagged for demonetization, and I think that's how we get this situation where there's no real correlation between what their guidelines say and what's actually monetizable, or what actually gets monetized versus demonetized versus deleted. So I would tend to explain the lack of consistency by appealing to sort of the natural order of corporate bureaucracy and all the chaos that it creates. But what's interesting and potentially a little bit frightening is how, when it comes to censorship, all of this corporate bureaucratic chaos actually kind of works in their favor. Because, let's just focus on the issue of gun content for a moment, because that's gotten the most press of anything that YouTube has ever tried to censor. If YouTube and Google, whoever's behind it, was a perfectly efficient corporation that one day decided that they were going to get rid of all their gun-related content because, it's not politically correct, they don't want to support that kind of thing, whatever. They decide to censor all gun-related content, and so they write a perfect algorithm that overnight deletes every gun-related channel, every gun-related video, and so the next day you have hundreds, if not thousands, of displaced content creators who've suddenly lost their channel and are now looking for a new platform to switch to. You've got millions of viewers who are consuming that content on YouTube and now suddenly can't anymore and are looking for other platforms where they can find it. And so somehow or other those groups are going to get together. Someone is going to create a platform for gun-friendly video content, and viewers and creators are going to flock to that platform, and there would be a viable competitor to YouTube at least for that specific subject. And frankly, if they can get enough momentum going from that specific subject, then they can branch out into other subjects and, in the long run, potentially become a viable competitor to YouTube as a business. And most importantly, the content doesn't actually get censored. It gets deleted from one platform only to migrate to another platform that becomes an increasingly viable voice in the marketplace of ideas. However, obviously that's not what happens. Instead of having everyone kicked off, everything deleted at once, whenever YouTube announces a new initiative to sort of ban or limit gun-related content, what you see in practice is this chaotic trickle of a few videos get deleted here and there, a few channels get deleted here and there, a handful of videos get demonetized that probably have been demonetized and remonetized a few times already. And so instead of getting this mass exodus of people to a different platform, you have a slow trickle of people away from YouTube. And a lot of the content creators who quit because of censorship issues don't actually look for another platform. They just get discouraged and quit. Because it can be very discouraging when, you're never actually kicked off, but every day you get, a couple more videos demonetized, here and there you get one deleted, here and there you get a channel strike or whatever. And every time something negative happens, the algorithm sends you a nasty gram by email, and it just, it's easy for them to create the impression that, that your content isn't valued, and it's just not worth pursuing, I think is where some people land. And so, you like I say, you get this trickle of content creators leaving the platform, but I'll bet that for every channel that YouTube has actually deleted, as a way of censoring their content, I'll bet there's a dozen more that have just quit of their own volition and haven't gone anywhere else. And so the result of this kind of chaotic, bureaucratic censorship is that in the end it's a lot more effective than efficient censorship would be, because if they were efficient in censoring people on their platform, the people would just go somewhere else. If they make it so slow and inefficient that they can drag it out till those people get discouraged to the point where they just don't produce content anymore, then they destroy that content permanently and it actually gets censored. So at the end of the day, it's not really so much an issue of YouTube or Google literally censoring people as it's a matter of their policies demoralizing them to the point where they censor themselves. Now, admittedly, for a channel that's trying to be commercially viable and trying to make money or trying to pay off $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 worth of professional video equipment, plus pay the salaries of their camera crew and their professional video editing team and so on and so forth. Yes, if you're in that position, then demonetization of a few videos is a little more serious than it is for a hobbyist. I guess there's nothing that demoralizes a for-profit company like running out of money. Anyway, hopefully that gives you a little more rounded perspective on the censorship situation. But anyway, moving on to the fourth question. Where do I see the channel going in the next 10 years? I don't really see myself doing anything much different in the next 10 years. For most of the past decade, this has just been a hobby. I enjoy making videos. I make videos about anything that interests me. I would expect to continue that insofar as I am able for the foreseeable future. Occasionally I have had ideas for different directions I could take the channel, like maybe doing more detailed educational type videos where I'm teaching a subject more coherently, or progressively over a series of lectures or other videos, or maybe focusing more specifically on a certain topic, like maybe make a channel for just my music videos. But I think if I was to do anything like that, I would pursue it as a separate venture. It'd be a separate spin-off channel, or maybe even an entirely different program that I post on a different platform. And so I don't think it would really affect this channel or what I post here very much. I like to think that I've made quite a few interesting videos over the last 10 years, and Lord willing, I hope to continue making and posting the same kind of content for the next 10 years and beyond. And on that note, I think I've covered about all that I've got for you today, so until next time, thank you for watching The Idahoan Show.